the fall for the duck season. National titleship again.
I'm not going with that.
You can always go.
You ready?
Yeah.
We can get going.
I didn't recognize Denise without her dress on.
Without what?
The dress on.
Oh, that dress, yeah.
Okay, the Planning Commission work session for July 28th, 2014 is called to order. We have a staff presentation.
So tonight we're having a work session on the sanitary sewer moratorium. So we have Salita Froman Goodrich from our Public Works Department who will be presenting to you tonight and here to answer any questions that you have.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning, sorry. It's been a long day, hasn't it? Good evening, Commissioners.
It is morning somewhere.
So this evening I wanted to inform you about the sanitary sewer moratorium that the City Commission is proposing to adopt on Wednesday, August 6th next week. And, whoops, yeah, okay. And specifically wanted to give you some information about the sanitary sewer master plan findings for existing gravity sewers in Oregon City and the 4 flow-constrained areas that we've identified, the developable lots within the flow-constrained areas, showing, capacity-deficient sewers, the areas that are impacted by the moratorium, explain the reasons and need for the moratorium on land development and building permit approvals, how the city will plan to implement the moratorium, and inform you on the next steps to fix the capacity-deficient problems and build a system that meets both the existing and future capacity needs. And with that, a schedule of how we're planning to implement it. The city has a new sanitary sewer master plan that's currently in the process of being adopted. This sanitary sewer master plan replaces the city's 2003 sanitary sewer master plan. Brown and Caldwell is our consultant for the sanitary sewer master plan, and they've evaluated the city's existing sanitary sewer system with a new hydraulic model. The model has brought forward results where we found 4 areas in the city where existing capacity sewers, existing gravity sewers are predicted to have significant surcharging within 5 feet of manhole rims with risk of overflows into our basements and manholes. The figure that you see has shows what happens when sewers when sewers do surcharge. The wastewater flows rise in the manholes and into existing basements, depending on elevations in the area. So the model that that Brown and Caldwell prepared does identify 4 areas in the city where there is predicted significant surcharging with the risk of overflows into basements or overflows at manholes. So BNC, Brown and Caldwell continued looking at these areas a little more closely to see how severe the surcharging was, and we looked at wet weather conditions with a Department of Environmental Quality wet weather storm scenario. That's a one storm in 5 years over a 24-hour period with approximately 3 inches of rainfall. So The 4 areas that were identified are shown in red. These are the gravity sewers that had significant surcharging within 5 feet or less of the manhole rims. And 2 of the locations actually showed overflows at specific manholes. We're generally in the sanitary sewer master plan identifying this as 12th Street, 12th, 13th, and Division Street, the Lynn Avenue area, and the Hazelwood Drive area. This figure here shows the areas that are being affected by the sanitary sewers that are surcharging. These are 4 different basins, and they're predominantly residential areas. They have, they have 4 different separate areas. We've got the Lynn Avenue again shown, the Hazelwood Drive area, 12th Street, and 12th, 13th, and Division Street. Most of these areas are fairly built out already. There are some developable lots that have been identified. In red, we're showing what appears to be vacant lands or a high potential for development. 95% of these areas are residential, and 5% are mixed use. So the main reasons for the moratorium are that we have sanitary sewers that are in surcharging and overflow conditions in the existing system during a DEQ regulated storm. The city's comprehensive plan, MPDS, permitting and DEQ regulations, as well as Federal Clean Water Act regulations, prohibit discharging pollutants into the waters and having sanitary sewer overflows. There is a risk to public health, as well as contaminating the bodies of the U.S. waters. The sanitary sewer capacity problems do need to be fixed in the city. We need to avoid making the problems worse by adding additional flows to these systems until we can fix the gravity sewers. And what we're looking at is upsizing the sanitary sewers that were identified. For implementation of this, to help limit any future problems with adding additional flows, we have proposed the moratorium on building permits for any new development that would be increasing wastewater flows to these systems. Whoops. The land use applications we would continue to process during the moratorium, and providing conditions regarding the fixing of those sewers prior to actually issuing the building permits for those developments. The next steps would be adopting the moratorium next week on August 6th. The city is in the process of doing a rate and system development charge study, which we have information we're presenting to the City Commission on August 12th, the following week, regarding what rates and funding from system development charges would be needed to fund our capital improvement program that would include those moratorium sewers. We will be adopting we are in the process of adopting the sewer master plan, and with the adoptions of the sewer master plan and the rates and SDCs, we would start implementing the plans for design and construction of these improvements through a period of approximately 3 to 5 years, with the next upcoming biennial budget. And are there any questions?
Yeah, can you go back to the map that had just the lines, not the one more? No, there. You've got like these developed as 4 different areas. Are they 4 different drainage basins?
Yes.
So the 12th, 13th division doesn't drain into 12th.
Well, the 12th, 13th division does drain into the 12th Street.
Okay. Then why are they segregated?
Because if the 12th Street improvements are constructed, let's see, I don't have a pointer, but the areas
There's
12th
one.
Street, northwest, southwest,
Hey,
and...
if you wiggle the mouse, it should appear too.
I'm sorry?
If you wiggle the mouse, it should appear on the.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 12th Street, northeast, northwest, and southwest, with the improvements shown in that 12th Street, these basins can be served, any properties within those basins. It will take, let's see if I can get back to the... So with these improvements, those 3 sub-basins of 12th Street can all be served once these improvements are completed. For the 12th, 13th, and Division, these improvements here would need to be made for that basin to have the capacity needed.
Okay, so you broke them up because they're basically project breakups as opposed to
They're
basin breakups.
Project breakups, yeah.
Okay.
Based, yeah, project based.
All right. Now, okay. So Hazelwood heads towards the bluff, not down Lynn. Just as a
Yeah,
shorthand. Okay.
Hazelwood area, this is Werner Parrott, and
Right.
it flows down Hazelwood Drive.
Okay. Do you have a cost estimate right now? I mean, I know it's going to be a round number, but of each
Yeah.
of these or the whole thing?
For the whole thing, $3.14 million for all of the areas here.
Okay. Do you have them broken down roughly?
Yes, the 12th Street area is approximately $407,000. The 13th Street, Division Street, is approximately $880,000.
Ooh.
The Lynn Avenue is $470,000, and Hazelwood Drive is approximately $1.3 million.
So, my understanding, the basic issue here is, and I'm going to really simplify it, but the basic issue is you've got 10-inch pipes up above. They come down to an 8-inch pipe, and then you go back out to a 10-inch. That you're constrained in your flow suddenly because you've got an older system connecting to newer systems.
Well, in quite a few of these areas, we do have an old system that also has actually high infiltration and inflow as well. So during the wet weather, these appear to be quite leaky pipes, and we haven't done an actual study of the I&I for these, but you know, that is something else that we would be going hand in hand with our improvement program, is infiltration and inflow study as well, and looking at the best fix for the pipes. But basically each of these areas do require one size up from what is existing. So for a 12-inch, the fix is basically installing a 15-inch to handle the existing and future flows.
And who came up with the term surcharging? That just seems so inappropriate. I mean, it's a monetary term, and here we're talking about, you know, water pressure. So
Yeah, I guess that's the wastewater lingo for pipes that are.
it's confusing because it sounds like we're adding a sewer
overcapacity.
fee as opposed to.
Actually, surcharging has other meanings too, so it can be even more confusing. Tony, I had a question for you. What exactly is the role of the Planning Commission in this? Are we expected to make a recommended approval to the Planning Commission or to the City
At this
Commission?
point, it was more informational to make sure that you were aware of what was happening. In the end, it's the City Commission's decision on the ordinance to declare.
Does this become a part of the master plan that we'll be looking at this fall?
Is this being added in, or was it being addressed separately?
Each of these improvements is covered very well in the sanitary sewer master plan, and there is appendix that are more detailed specifically for the moratorium improvements. So it's very well covered in the sanitary sewer master plan. It doesn't speak specifically of the moratorium, though.
I'm curious, is there a priority of the order that these projects would proceed? I assume that they're not all going to be done at the same time.
No, we have been working on the priority of the different improvements as we're working through the rate and system development charge study. And we have looked at the 12th Street, 13th Street, and I believe 12th Street, 13th Street is looking at in the first year, and then Lynn Avenue as well. So as Lynn, 12th and 13th are looking at the first year, Hazelwood in the second year, and Division in the third year. And that's balancing our rates and system development charges to bring the funding needed for those as well.
Other questions?
I guess my question is why did this pop up so suddenly? Why?
I don't think it popped up suddenly.
Well, as far as the Planning Commission is notified, I mean, I understand why we're acting quickly once we know, but they would have thought there would have been more concern. I mean, reports of floodings or, you know, backflow reports or something that would have made this pop up on the radar a lot sooner than it did. Is there a system in place to keep the next one from there, and why did this one take so long?
The background, as I understand, in this 2003 sanitary sewer master plan, each of these areas were showing up as slight surcharging for these specific sewers. Over the past 10 years, we have had surcharging in specific areas that has been observed by operations staff. The Hazelwood area has actually had some overflows as well over the past, I guess that would be about past 4 or so years. They've had a couple overflow incidents. So it's, and then as far as this, the sewers becoming as they surcharge, they do weaken and continue to degrade, and so it's hard to know exactly what's been taking place inside the sewers over that 10-year time period, going from, as we observed it slightly back 10 years ago, to the condition that they're in right now.
Could we avoid this moratorium by spending a little less in the interim and do like relining to minimize I&I so that, you know, like just solve that part of the dilemma, or at least abate it?
Yes, I'm not an expert as far as how well those rehabilitation programs work in practicality, but it does. There's no guarantee as you're working through an I&I study that you're going to find enough I&I to remove from the system to not have to still do the improvements needed.
Well, yeah, I don't doubt that we need to do the improvements, but you know, if we could spend $250,000, reline all these, avoid the moratorium, but keep them on our priority capitalization, so that in the next 5 to 7 years they're fixed, but we avoid a moratorium. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Well, the moratorium, we felt the need was there to not add any more flow to these systems because the severity of the surcharging being within a DEQ regulatory storm versus our design storms are actually in the sanitary sewer master plan. We're using a 1 in 10-year design storm. We took a more serious look at these areas because of the severity of the surcharging, and when we looked at the DEQ regulatory storm, there wasn't much change with the results that we had for these. So
Sorry.
we're, showing that there is a definite problem with these 4 locations, and in an existing situation, and the real need is to not have any risk of overflowing into basements as well as through the manholes.
Alita, could you put up that screen that showed the developable areas? Can't even speak right tonight. There's one that had red. Other than I know we have one in front of us right now, an existing one that had been applied for. Are any of the other ones have any activity towards them, or is it just this one property right now that we're aware of that had any activity towards developing?
There's 4
I'm just wondering if they're
properties that
team choices, right?
have been in
Team
one
Okay.
process, land use application process or land use application approvals. We have in Hazelwood, we have the Portland Metro Men's Center on Warner Parrott Road. In the Lynn Avenue area, we have a property that came in for a pre-application, and that was for a 30-unit
That's what we have to let
That's what we have in front of
multifamily.
us. So I get the picture. It was more along the lines I was wondering how much activity that this would be impacting. So, because I saw lots of little red dots, but I had forgot about all these big red ones down there. So, it gives me a pretty good idea. We've got a lot of land that this could impact.
I came up with, let's see. About 64.2 acres within our, basically the red areas are comprised of about 64.2 acres. And 95% of that is residential, and 5% is mixed use out of that area.
And then, just to be clear, to put it bluntly, these are the poop pipes, not the stormwater pipes.
Yes, they're the gravity sanitary sewer
Okay.
pipes.
Has the same modeling been done for the stormwater system?
We have not done a stormwater master plan.
Well, if nothing else, the hydraulic modeling that, you know,
Not-
because I
not
don't want to
recent.
get this done and then say, oh, and right next to it was the stormwater, and we got to do it all over again.
When we actually start looking at specifically the projects, we're going to be looking at, we're probably going to go through a whole video survey, making sure we identify on those specific gravity sewers exactly what problems we can find.
Well,
And if there is inflow coming, you know, substantially from an area, those areas would be fixed, like a lateral or a break in the pipe, depending on how we plan to implement the actual improvement.
do we have a separated sanitary and stormwater system?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then, again, the question is the stormwater system being hydraulically modeled to find out if they could cause a moratorium because of their constraints?
The stormwater system doesn't, I guess, pose the health risk that a sanitary sewer system has.
Tell that to the
It's-
person whose
Yeah,
basement's full of water.
Yeah,
mean-
the flooding, but yes, the stormwater master plan, I'm not sure where that is on the
Well, I'm not
planning
worried about the master plan, I'm
horizon.
just worried about doing this new hydraulic model so that we can be ahead of the game and not get stuck with some surprise because we let somebody build and suddenly basements are overflowing.
As I recall, the last presentation we had on this is that the system is not 100% separated right now. That there are stormwater laterals that are feeding in to the
In some older areas,
to
there,
combined systems.
yeah, in some older areas, there could be some
So
roof drains and,
as part of the solution to this, getting those areas separated will solve two problems.
yes, yes. That would be a goal.
So I guess just coming back to the issue of priority, it seems like project priority ought to be focused on getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak, in the areas that will impact the most potential development areas. It surprises me you're talking about having the Hazelwood and the Lynn Avenue kind of at the second or third tier of the improvement when that seems to be the area with the most potential development.
Most likely source of SDCs is Hazelwood, and it's the last one on the list, so. And it has one of the identified overflow sites, so.
Does. Yeah, I don't have, on the prioritization, I don't have good information on, I can get back to you on that as far as how the
Well,
prioritization of things.
it's just an observation in terms of maximizing, if we've only got a certain amount of money to spend it most effectively by prioritizing the areas that need the fixes first, the most.
And we did look at the hospital being in one of those areas, the 12th Street area. So that was a prioritization.
Well, and Lynn happens to be right on top of our Lynn Myers Leland project too, so there might be some coinciding that can go there with street systems as well as, you know, that you know, while they're dealing with streets and sidewalks and crosswalks and things are torn up, great time to change a pipe, so. Yeah. Okay.
Other questions? Okay.
They are informed.
I read
Thank
that
you.
other stuff she gave us, so,
Yeah.
that
So-
big packet.
We did give you a letter from Mr. and Mrs. Streeter dated July 23rd, 2014.
Yep.
Yep.
With their pre-op in there as well. We'll also provide that to the city commission.
And so the decision, so the 6th is a city commission meeting.
Yeah.
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Wednesday the 6th.
Cat day for me.
Oh, okay.
Do we have anything else for the work session?
So 7.
We got a break until 7? Okay.
I guess the only thing I would say before he closes that is that given everything that I do know, and I know that there are some pending applications, I guess I need to say for the record that I feel that the city is proceeding with the best interests of everyone in the community. I understand that there are development pressures, but, you know, sanitary sewer to me is probably a higher priority than storm, although when we get a lot of rain, you sure make that a priority, but, you know, as Damon would say, you have to be able to pull that lever down, and I really think that the city is not doing this in haste. I think that they are trying to look ahead, and they've been working on this, so I don't have any hesitancy in suggesting to them that they proceed as is being recommended. I know we're not making a formal vote, but we have issues. And they really do need to be
Public was
fixed.
invited, is there any opportunity for public comment on the meeting?
It's your work session. It's up to you how you like to.
And we're ahead of time if we want to.
Yeah, I don't have any problem if people want to say something. I mean,
Sure, that's-
the rubber's going to meet the road on August 6th.
Right. And I understand you're not.
Well, you can't talk from back there, though. If you want to come talk, you need to fill out a slip and come on up.
Well, you can talk and
Come
then
on
you
up.
fill out a
You can
slip
fill out the slip
afterwards.
later.
Yeah, you'll need to,
I don't know if it, you're not making the decision, but
Stop.
so you need to identify yourself.
Okay.
And, where you live.
Just like Oregon City.
Yeah, Oregon City's good.
Ed Aarons, and I live in Estacada.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you own property in Oregon City?
I do.
Okay. And where might that be?
It's
In one of those areas.
in one of those areas, yes. It's in
That's
the
fine.
12th and 13th Division.
Okay.
It's the little red dot that's just kind of in the southeast corner of the 12th and 13th Division. Yes, down a little bit further. Down further, right there. That one would be ours there. And as mentioned before, we have gone through all of the process for land use of our property. You guys have probably seen that because I would imagine it goes through the Planning Commission. We've gone through the very expensive process of getting it approved because it had a geological hazard overlay and a natural resource overlay. My son and I have been working on this project for about a year now because he's planning to get married, and our hopes is to use that property. We're going to develop it and put a house there for him to live in. And so we are, 2/3 of the way through the process, and it would be very disgusting, very expensive for us to stop that process at this point. We've been over 6 months in the process because it takes 6 months to go through this part of the process. So to just all of a sudden tell us you can't do this now would be really devastating to our plan. And so I guess I have several questions, maybe not for you, but for the city. It seems odd that that whole section only has about 4 properties in it, and I can't understand how 4 houses could shut down that whole 12th, 13th Division Street portion of this project, for one thing. And I'm just kind of wondering, is there going to be a provision for those that have gone through already a great part of the process to continue the process? So I guess those are
Question for
some of my
staff.
questions.
That's a question for Tony.
Nope. At this point, once we've identified that we have a health and safety issue with sanitary sewers overflowing, we're balancing situations like you hear right now of folks who have a vacant property or are working through the process but have not hooked up or begun their construction yet, versus what happens if we do get an event and we flood multiple basements and we have this information and we continue to allow folks to hook up to the system.
We get sued.
And so it's balancing those two liabilities essentially. And so, in the end, it'll be the city commission's decision as to what risks they're willing to take to accommodate that. But it would be hard for staff, knowing that you have an existing condition, to continue to allow, because how do you say no to the next person who may be in a very similar situation? It's very difficult, and it's obviously something that we want to do. But once that information has been presented, we need to bring that to the commission for them to make a decision on the best way to proceed.
Well, is there an appeals process, like, say on the 6th they adopt this? Could individuals come forward to the city commission and request,
An exception.
Yeah, a non-conforming use or whatever the phrase would be?
I doubt it.
Okay.
How would you ever implement that and decide who gets to go and who doesn't?
Well,
By those who were ahead of the moratorium, I don't know.
When you're talking about adding, you have an existing problem.
Yeah, you can't.
The straw is broke the camel's back, to use that phrase from land use. And
It's a language phrase.
when the incremental cuts all add up.
So that gets back to the line the pipes and then let them get.
But how?
Oh, I understand. I'm
It's
just
a significant investment.
Yeah.
So I
Please make
guess,
sure your mics are turned on.
I guess
Or
the,
on.
I think he means on.
at this point, you need to plan to make your case to the city commission on August 6th.
So when they make that decision on the 6th, when is it actually implemented?
The 6th.
That day.
It'll be up to them. There's a couple, the ordinances get adopted in two methods. One would be a first reading, then come back for a second reading,
Or emergency.
and then it would go into effect 30 days later. Their other option is to declare emergency, which they would probably do in a health and safety issue, and implement it immediately.
So as you were moving along with this, obviously you have a constrained site. If you tell me you've got geotech and you've got natural resources, so it's not a basic run-of-the-mill site that I would say exists in Oregon City. And if you're over in that little area I was looking at, I said, oh, you must be over in the canyon land. So when you had your reviews with the city, were you in any way made aware that there might be a problem?
Not until just recently. No,
Within the last month? Last couple of
a
months?
month or so.
Okay.
I was called and told that this was coming down the pike and that I should hurry up and get my building permits. But you can't just hurry up and get building permits.
No.
It's like it's in a geotech area. I have to have spatial engineering and all that kind of stuff. And they did tell me that it would take once the city heard it, it would take a month for them to. I don't know if I can get building permits with engineering and everything that's involved in a month anyway. So I was informed of this by the planning division, but they took Rome wasn't built in a day, but I think it was built quicker than what it takes to get things
No.
through planning anymore.
It took longer, I assure you. But yeah, I
But,
totally sympathize with you. I mean, I really do.
But it took a full 6 months after I applied at the planning department for them to go through the process. In fact, I realized they got me the paperwork hours before the deadline. It wasn't days, it was hours. I mean, I got it the day of the deadline that they had to meet.
Well,
So
I
it's
think
like they took the whole 6 months for that part of the process. And
we
so-
all appreciate your concerns, but we, as this commission, has no influence on this decision. So I hate to cut you off, but you're kind of barking up the wrong tree here.
Okay, that's fine.
But it's
We
not-
we were invited to the meeting.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
assumed it was something we were,
It was
Yeah,
good
everybody in the
practice.
city got those cards.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but it applied
Yeah.
to me because it was definitely.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
good
I
practice for
got
next
one.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
I got a yellow card as well.
I know,
I'm
but it
in,
applied to me.
I'm
Yeah,
in the,
no, I understand.
I can get one of those cards.
I'm in one of
Is
the-
there anybody else that would like to speak on this matter?
Come on up,
Yeah.
Barb.
Come on up.
To,
The man with his hand in the air. The man with the tie. The only one with the tie.
My name is Barb Streeter. I'm at 545 Holmes Lane. I am one of the properties that you were specifically discussing. And I have a bug on my paper. I'd like to talk to Tom Goff just for a moment, please. If I could identify in the Lynn Avenue south and north areas, you asked what properties were affected. And I think I addressed it in the letter I sent you that we were the only private property that was affected in that area. If you can identify it, we're the large square of red that has, thank you, that is us and our neighbor. Directly above us, our city is the city yard. So the red area that's directly above our square is the city yard. A long rectangle directly below us is the Rose Farm, which I don't believe will ever be developed. The square directly below that, which is large and rectangular and runs horizontally, is Oregon City First Presbyterian Church, which we're also members of, and they have no desire at this moment to develop. Directly to the left of that long rectangle is Mount Pleasant, and I believe at this point the city owns that property. So within the Lynn Avenue north and south area, in general, we're the only private property that is there and developable. And I'm sorry, I didn't know the gentleman behind us. We're the largest private property. How about that? But I just feel like with the city and the school district, there's another church there that I didn't identify. There is really a very limited amount of land that will be developed soon, if possible. I gave you our concerns in the letter, and thank you for reading that and paying attention to that. I would just also note that we're very concerned with the payment plan for sewer improvements if the moratorium comes into effect. Looking at their 2013-15 biennial budget, there's only $968,000 in capital outlay for projects for those 2 years. The Lynn Avenue project takes at least almost half of that if they were to maintain the same budget. When they talk about SDC and fee increases, what we heard from city staff, and we've met with many of them repeatedly, is they're proposing, let's say, a $5 increase. And with my very basic limited math, that would round out to about $700,000 a year in increased fees. That still takes quite a bit of time to do the improvements that they have identified. I would love to see that some plan come up for sewer improvement that does not include a moratorium. I think a moratorium has a negative effect on the cities, and it gives a negative impression to folks that might be interested in future development.
Yep.
So thank you for your
Okay,
time.
Thank you. And I would also encourage you to attend the August 6th.
You know, I must say that staff in general made us believe that it must be approved here before it went to the city commission. And I met with the mayor, and he also believed it must be approved here before it went to him, because he told me it may not be on the August 6th meeting if you didn't approve it. So I was surprised to hear Tony say there was no vote required for this. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is-
Just as you mentioned earlier, her letter is going to the city council as part of the record, so that's already being delivered. So.
Is there anybody else in the audience that wished to speak on this issue?
All right.
Okay, seeing none. The work session,
well, do we want to make a recommendation to the city commission? It's unofficial, but
No.
no?
I don't even know if that's a possibility.
If it,
This is more a dress rehearsal for everybody.
go ahead.
I would say the work session is closed, and
Yep.
we'll reconvene at 7.
Thank you. Did you fill out the little slip?
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Guile.
Abstain, wasn't there.
You still reading?
Oh, yeah, but.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe.
Aye.
Chair Kidwell.
Aye. And for the Planning Commission
I move
meetings.
we adopt the minutes for April 14th, 2014 as written.
Second? Let's get somebody else.
Commissioner Guile.
Yes, yay.
Commissioner McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe.
Abstain?
Commissioner Mahoney.
Aye.
Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
We just like to make you have that extra abstain column in your.
Non-agenda.
The next item on the agenda is for any public comments on items not on the agenda for the evening. Is there any public comment on items not on the Planning Commission agenda? Seeing none, we will move on then to the public hearing portion of the meeting. The first item, 4A, is PC 14-084, CU 13-03, conditional use, and SP 13-22, site plan and design review for a wireless communication pole on the McLaughlin Elementary School property located at 19230 South End Road. For the sake of this hearing, I'm going to be reading a quasi-judicial hearing script. Public hearing on this application that is scheduled tonight. A staff report has been prepared and been made available to the public 7 days before the public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to the applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeal. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. We will now open the record for the files that I just read. Does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare? And has any commissioner visited the site?
Not I.
I actually took a look at the proposed location, drove in and just looked at it and left. Didn't make any contact with anyone.
I made a subsequent visit to the site after the last meeting. I also went over to the church on Lynn Avenue to look at their cell tower location because I was not remembering it being there. And in addition, I spoke with Tom O'Brien about a possible suggestion for an alternate site.
What was the alternate site discussion?
It was when I went over to, during my site visit to John McLaughlin Elementary School, I also paid a site visit to the property that the fire station on South End Road currently sits on, and walked part of that site and also drove behind part of the site to look at the church, the adjacent residential homes, and the fire station itself as a possible suggestion for an alternate site.
Bob?
No, I haven't visited the site.
And I have nothing to declare. Does the public have any questions for the commission for their statements that they've made?
I also had that little map from the packet with me while I was walking around.
Okay. We will proceed with the staff report.
All right, thank you. The applicant has proposed a conditional use and site plan design review for the construction of a wireless communication pole on the McLaughlin Elementary School property, which is located at 19230 South End Road. The applicant has requested a continuance of tonight's hearing to allow the school board time to discuss the proposal at their August 11th, 2014 board meeting. Staff recommends taking public testimony from any person who wishes to testify tonight and then continuing the hearing with the record open to the date certain of August 25th, 2014.
I feel like you rehearsed that. Well done.
That was pretty good.
Good enunciation.
What was the date again?
August
25th.
25th.
Fastest I've heard.
You almost get to memorize it, Tom.
Yeah.
He didn't use that word specificity.
Any other comments from staff?
At this time.
So we will, at this time, take, is there, the applicant wish to make any statements or presentation?
I don't think they're here.
No.
I
Okay.
don't think they're here.
So we will proceed with public comments on this issue. The first person to speak is Peggy Falkenstein.
Hi.
My name is Peggy Falkenstein. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. I live in Oregon City. I'm here to give testimony on how the proposed cell tower at McLaughlin Elementary School is in direct conflict with the values in our South End concept plan. I have a bachelor's degree from Marylhurst University with an emphasis in child development and a master's degree in public administration from PSU. I'm no stranger to education and business partnerships. As a member of the full-time faculty at Clackamas Community College, as part of the Workforce Development Department, I collaborated with business partners to develop training programs for the retail industry, such as Target, trucking and logistics industry, and many others. For the trucking industry, I actually developed a consortium throughout the state and secured a federal grant for $1 million. In other words, I'm not adverse to education and business partnerships. What I am adverse to is an inappropriate proposal that contradicts community livability. I've lived on Salmonberry Drive, right adjacent to the school, for 28 years. For 28 years, I've watched the school grounds provide an anchor of livability as the subdivisions around it were built, east and north of the school grounds. For 28 years, I've watched the population grow. To the east of the school was the Filbert Orchard, and now it has wonderful homes for families. And to the north was the Roberta Herndon, who was actually, she was a building principal at McLaughlin Elementary, and she had the farm there on that whole side where the fence is now separating the homes from the school. And there was a barbed wire fence, and you could go over and feed her cows. And so all of that is developed into homes for families, which means for 28 years I've watched the population grow. And the school and park, we call it kind of a school park, usage has increased with each subdivision. The school park is an oasis of livability in a growing community. For 28 years, I've watched hundreds of parents teach their children how to ride bicycles on the slope that will no longer be available if the tower is built. For 28 years, I've watched families cheer on softball games from the slope that will no longer be available if the cell tower is built. Yesterday, Sunday, July 27th, I counted 55 vehicles in the school parking lot. 55 families came to play softball or sit on the proposed cell tower site and cheer on the players. In the words of our South End concept plan, let's continue to promote livability and strengthen the sense of community and connectedness. Please vote no on the proposed AT&T cell tower.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next person speaking is John Falkenstein.
Oh, double teaming.
Call people to the time.
I'm John Falkenstein, also Oregon City. I would like to speak with the Commission tonight about safety issues that result from placing a 75-foot tower on public grounds that are used 24/7. All ages use the facilities there, and it is more than daytime. It does go into the nighttime usage too. As a neighbor, you see that. My concerns, if the tower is approved, include climbing of the structure by kids, especially 10 to 12-year-old kids, young teenagers, through dares, especially at night, because I do see the younger teens and the older youth hanging out on the school grounds even after dark. Putting a 6-foot fence around the site really does little to stop this kind of activity. And I don't know about you, but when I was young, a 6-foot fence was a fun thing to climb. So, another topic. 19 deaths have occurred at cell phone towers in 16 months, beginning January 1st, 2013. Deaths by cell phone tower workers. They've fallen either maintaining or while constructing a tower. I do not believe it is appropriate to expose elementary school kids to this potential danger. Whether children see it or whether they hear about it, it's not a healthy learning environment, which is what the school is about. Life flight helicopters land on the ball field immediately in front of the proposed site. Now, I understand that the FAA has expressed no concern, but I'm wondering if the FAA is aware of the life flight helicopter landings. 75-foot tower right next to where they land, I think in my mind could be a potential safety problem. AT&T maintenance trucks may come onto the school grounds as needed 24/7, according to the lease agreement with the district. Add to this the regular maintenance, I understand might be like once a month, and the actual construction, and I think that big trucks and unpredictable children is not a safe combination. I understand from reviewing the application materials that the tower would be constructed for 95-mile-an-hour winds and just 30 miles per hour with 1-inch ice. I've lived in this region most of my life, and I've lived through these conditions. Does anyone remember the Columbus Day storm, 1962? Back a ways. But we had a 40-inch oak tree fall on our house in that storm. I just looked up the wonderful internet a little bit ago. 116-mile-an-hour wind clocked in Portland. Many locations had their anemometers blown out before the height of the storm. That's one I remember. Can't forget it. 1-inch ice may not be common, but I've seen many an ice storm that created heavy caking. And I wonder about those 500-pound, as I understand it might be foul fir branches, and what happens when they collect the ice, and what happens when that begins melting and falling off. I think that there could be danger of falling chunks of ice. And by the way, I've watched children sled, young kids, slowly sledding down the very slope that is the location for the tower. So there's endless activities that happen over there all times of the year. Cell phone towers have been known to collapse. This is one I hadn't really looked up until about 2 hours ago, and I just did a quick look on the internet. February 1st, 2014, Clarksburg, West Virginia, 3 dead. March 27th, Blaine, Kansas, 2 dead. March 31st, 2014, the article reported that the weekend prior to that, in North Adams, Massachusetts, 2 towers fell. They were designed for 80 to 90 mile-an-hour winds. The winds were only clocked at 44 miles per hour, which brought those 2 towers down. I really didn't spend much time looking. I just stopped at that point. My gosh, there really are examples out there. Landscaping around the fenced area that's proposed.
Your time has expired. If you could
Can I do it real
conclude your remarks,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Landscaping creates areas that can block views for people. Bottom line, I believe the tower located on the elementary school site is creating an attractive nuisance, and that with all the related safety and liability issues that come from this, it's not a good choice. Given the high level of community usage year-round and 600 elementary school students that use the school grounds, I just don't see how the safety concerns allow this to be a viable cell phone tower location. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to speak is Paul Edgar.
Is that on
I'm Paul Edgar. I'm from Oregon City and Kenema. I just wanted you to realize that the Kenema kids, when I went out to in my neighborhood helping to get a petition signed as to whether the people were against it, one of the most important areas was just going to a lot of the families in Kenema that have kids, and they're all concerned. They uniformly said, we don't want this, we don't agree with this. We don't agree with the health impacts that are potentially there. And I think when you read some of the information that Tom O'Brien has sent out about national or of the World Health Organization, yes, they're reasonable. And parents in Kenema agree with that. But on the second front, I would like to also point out that this degrades property values. This is not a positive impact, and in the long haul has negative effects on revenues to be generated from one of a very beautiful, excellent area, and it's going to degrade that. And I just think that there are other places, other alternatives, and that should be looked at. I too would like to see that the potential, maybe looking at the fire station or someplace different. Thank you.
Paul, did you say there was a petition that was floating around? Is that going to come to it?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that because I don't know where the boundaries are anymore, so are children who live in Kenema being bused over to South End Elementary School?
They're going to McLaughlin.
Okay. They
Yeah,
go to
so
McLaughlin.
yeah, so this is part of our kids feed to McLaughlin, and So it's not just the neighborhood along South End Road. It's impacting the parents of Kenema.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
This is what happens when we close elementary schools in people's neighborhoods. They have to get bused a long way away.
The next person to speak is Kathy Hogan.
Uh-oh, must be serious, she has orange paper.
You know I always insult people while I'm smiling. Because you can get away with it a little better. But if I tell you too often, you might remember. Kathy Hogan. I don't live in the city, but I pay taxes to that school. And everybody that was in the county that their children go to that school have not been notified. The school principal, I heard, is for it. I think that's not showing me that this, and the school district, that's not showing me that they are taking consideration of our children and the public. There are other good choices, even farther down South End, and maybe a higher spot away from homes. A child gets hurt, gets killed, I'm going to get sued as a taxpayer. Everybody that's in this city will be sued. It would be devastating to have that there. And don't tell me they don't climb. When my son told me what he climbed, he's 43 and I can't beat him now. No way I can spank him. But he climbed something down South End and they got the power lines. He's still here, it didn't go far enough, but that he was lucky. Not all kids are lucky. I know of a family when I was a child, their son, 17, climbed a tree and there were high power lines. He is not alive now, hasn't been alive for a long time because of the power lines. So kids do climb. I know that he got, I love telling a story. He went to that school. They got mud on it. The principal says, if you don't get the mud off, the 4 of you are going to each get a paddle for everyone you couldn't get off. I said, how in the heck did you get it off? We climbed on each other's shoulders. They got them all off but one, so they all got one paddle. But it was kind of a joke. Lightning strikes, because guess what's happened down in California? You talk about this, the snow. We went away and came back when that ice storm hit, and it was 2 weeks of ice storm. Got home just after the first one. Out of the 19 limbs that fell off our tree from all the ice, not saying that nothing's going to cause it, but that's a lot of ice. If it can do it on that, it can cause damage to a cell tower. It would be better in a safer place. The school district didn't call or give us all notification in that neighborhood. Everybody that's child that goes to that school, whether they're in Hazel Grove Wesleyan Farm neighborhood, should have been notified, should have had the PTA meeting and been done that. We've done it with the best we could as a neighborhood association. I gave you my concerns. There has got to be another place that's better than that and make the kids safer. I think one of our state laws or something is that about protecting our children. And that might be something you should look up, or maybe AT&T should.
So, Kathy, did you say, for the record, that you said that you are aware that Ginger, the principal,
I
is
heard
supportive
somebody
of this?
told me that she
Or
was.
is this just sort of hearsay?
It's hearsay, but you know what? I haven't heard her come and say no to any of the neighborhood association.
Well, I don't think she would be able to. I think it's a decision by the district. I'm sure they probably informally consult with her, but whether she gets a say about it, I would be highly doubtful.
Well,
that she
and you know
does.
what? I've been here, on the property for 40 years, lived here for 38 on the property. And I remember McLaughlin was going to get a cell tower at Century Link. They fought it. Are we any different than McLaughlin? Because the historic district means that Hazel Grove in that district, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
That was before CenturyLink.
It was Rivercrest had the one that they were.
It was going to be down here off of,
Yeah, it was
I remember, and you guys didn't get one.
U.S. West.
Yeah, whatever. So why should,
Okay.
wasn't even in a school ground.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
The next person to speak is Jim Peets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Pites. I'm a resident of Oregon City. I live on Hazel Grove Drive, which is right behind where the tower will be located. I'm also an AT&T customer. I have an AT&T cell phone that gets cell service right now that ranks from terrible to non-existent. So I'm really happy to see a tower come into the area. There's only one problem. I'm also a grandfather and a father. Now, my kids don't go to John McLaughlin, but a lot of kids do, and I direly love kids. I think that when we go to do something like this, even though I've heard pros and cons of what the cell tower will do to kids, we have to look and say the most important thing that we have to consider here is the kids. If there's any chance that these cell towers can cause problems or cause illness or cause death to one kid, it's not worth it. It's purely not worth it. And I understand there are other areas that maybe should be considered. Commissioner McGriff brought up one tonight, apparently, and that sounds like it would be a very viable site that does not offer danger to kids like this does. So with that thought in mind, I'm only here to urge you, please, do not put a tower on John McLaughlin School property. Let's find another place that's better suited for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is that it? Oh, is that Tom?
And the last person signed up to speak is Tom O'Brien.
Tom O'Brien, resident of Oregon City and co-chair of the Neighborhood Association. I'd like to correct a couple of statements that were given earlier, and I'd also like to elaborate a little bit on the conversation that Denise and I had before the meeting tonight. Denise talked to me in the lobby and said that she had visited the site after the last Planning Commission meeting and also had visited the tower site that currently is giving good, adequate service for AT&T in a large area. I mentioned to her that at our neighborhood association meeting on the 17th, several of our individuals got into quite in-depth discussions with two of the representatives from Lexcom. First of all, we didn't know they were coming to our meeting. They gave us no notice, but we did allow them to talk to the group and explain what their thinking was. Sharon Gretsch and Steve Bodine were there. Sharon unfortunately removed one of the things that we typically do in our neighborhood meetings, and that is, on matters of this nature, we will take a vote after the discussion has closed to determine whether or not we're for it or against it, so that we can officially weigh in on the matter. During the course of the conversation, Sharon asked people, all those who are opposed to this, please raise your hand, which took the matter out of the neighborhood association's hands as far as making a decision. When we had done a vote in January on the previous location, which was a little bit further to the north, but still on the school grounds, the vote was quite lopsided, but there were 5 of us, myself included, who abstained that evening. By Sharon pulling what she did, we didn't have the opportunity to take an official vote and see how many people were for or against, but I can tell you that with the exception of Steve Bodine and Sharon Gretsch, there were only 3 people in the room who did not raise their hands. So it was still a very overwhelming majority of people who felt strongly that that was the wrong location. One of the discussion items that came up was suggestions by our neighbors as to alternate locations, and Steve Bodine said that he is the site location person. He indicated upon being questioned, have you talked to the fire district about putting it at the fire station? Have you talked to Oregon City Methodist Church, where we're sitting for our meeting right now? Have you talked to Oregon City Christian Church, just another block up the street? He admitted that he had not.
They had no desire, evidently, to investigate a better location. Another question was asked of them. You mentioned in your preliminary information that you had in the application that there was a cell tower at a church over on Lynn Avenue, and it could potentially put an additional antenna over there. And they had looked at a PGE tower to the south of McLaughlin Grade School. So one of our people asked them, couldn't you put 2 smaller antennas at those 2 locations and cover the same area without impacting the children? There are 560 students in that school. Thing I wanted to correct, I think Kathy said that the principal at McLaughlin had made a statement. I, in a conversation prior to our January meeting, set up an appointment with the principal of today, Lisa Normand. I went and met in her office, and I asked her to please come to our January meeting. I asked her to ask the PTSO to come to our meeting so we could get the parents' input. We want a fair and open discussion at our meetings. She suggested that we have Ted Thunstad from the school district come, which we did. And Ted spoke in depth. We gave him as much time as he needed. There were 2 representatives who were officers of the PTSO at the January meeting. I had been told by Lisa when I met with her in her office that she was in favor of a cell tower because she had such poor reception. She couldn't use the cell phone that the district had given her for use in the dealings of her business. Subsequently, Ted Thunstad said the same thing at our January meeting, and in a conversation I had with Larry Didway, he said the same thing. When they're visiting the school, they don't have contact because the school has selected to choose AT&T as their carrier. There are other carriers, obviously. Some of us have switched over to other carriers intentionally because of the poor coverage. We recognize there's coverage, and we'd love to have coverage, but we just do not think this is the place to have it. You have proposed in that tower 11 branches, each weighing 500 pounds apiece. 2 additional branches at 250 pounds. Children are on the grounds all school hours, evenings, weekends. It's just not the proper place for a 7.5-story structure that has some dangerous elements to it. Whether it's a radiation issue, whether it's an ice issue, it's not the place. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Those are all of the people that I have signed up to speak. Are there any others that wish to speak at this time? Seeing
One.
none?
Oh, we have one.
One more? Come
Come on
forward.
up.
You need to identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Roy Flaherty, Oregon City resident. Live on Danny, so we're that northern part of the farm area that was developed. And I don't know if any of you saw the article in this morning's paper, the Oregonian. It talked about a osprey that chose a spot that was kind of a bad spot, top of cell tower. And evidently this is a normal thing for them to do. Well, now if you're going to build one and make it like a tree, I think it's not good for osprey. It's not good for kids. And they've had a lot of problems with that issue with the bird. But more importantly, as others have mentioned, it's the children. I've got grown children and grandchildren. When the grandkids come over, they go up there to play because it's readily available and it's a pretty neat place to play. It just is not an appropriate place. I think I had thought about the fire station myself also, but it has to be someplace that can be more controlled. I am an AT&T customer, just like Jim Pites. Terrible service. I live with it, and I will continue to live with it if it means the difference between having a cell tower in the kids' place, not having one. It's just not the right place. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a vacant platform over by Clackamas Park that can't get an osprey to land on that thing. It's been sitting like that for probably 10 years.
It doesn't have the attractive vibrations on it.
Yeah, it's not like a cell tower. Yeah.
It's not warm to the bum.
No.
Okay.
The eggs come pre-cooked.
So, at this time,
Close the
I would entertain,
the record open.
we'll leave the record open for public. I'll entertain a motion for continuance.
I move we continue this item to the Planning
Okay.
Commission meeting of August 25th,
Second.
2014.
Second. Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney? Aye. Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
Aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
And I'd remind all of you
Thank you, everybody, for
that spoke August 11th school board meeting. Because if the school doesn't want it, we'll never hear it here. It's just that simple, so.
What time does the school district board meet?
I don't know. Probably during class.
During class?
I don't know.
Do they meet, does anybody know if the school board meets at 7 o'clock? I don't know when they meet. 7 o'clock. Don't they have a landline?
I have no idea, but you know what? If you don't have electricity, the landline still works. So you have to- They should have a landline.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll
Lordy.
move on to the
Okay.
adoption of the findings of fact.
The next item on our agenda is item 4B, PC 14-086, Portland Metro Men's Center findings of fact. And we have a commission staff report.
At the July 14th Planning Commission meeting, the commission voted to deny the proposed conditional use site plan and lot line adjustment and to approve the non-conforming use on the property. Based on the discussion of the Planning Commission at that hearing, staff has provided findings for the decision in the, for adoption tonight. Staff does recommend the Planning Commission adopt the findings if they find them appropriate. So really, we're open to either a motion to accept, or if there's conversation and discussion that needs to occur, we can certainly help facilitate that.
I move to accept.
Oh, yeah.
I actually have a couple more things that I wanted to potentially add. I thought that the findings very adequately addressed what we talked about. We did generally talk about, very, very generally, about the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan that are listed, that's regarding the finding on page 5 of the findings. And I wanted to see if it would be possible to add that while the application does meet some of these goals of the, does address some of the goals of the comprehensive plan, it really does not meet the goal with regard to our goals with regard to public facilities, and it also does not meet the goal with regard to, let me see, get the right number here.
Real quick, on the public facilities, are you talking the sanitary?
Sanitary.
But we were able to
and-
condition that.
Yeah, well, and I think were some issues in my mind regarding transportation because of the way that Warner Parrott Road is currently configured. They were talking about having having buses coming in and out there. And then the only other one was on, hold on a second, I have notes in the margin, was under 1756.10.A.3. It says the site and the proposed development are timely. That's the criteria, and it said the Planning Commission makes no findings in regard to this. However, we could say that the site and the proposed development are not timely in light of the fact that there are the uses that the use that is being proposed, which gets into the next criteria. Basically, those two kind of go together to me. So, even though you conditioned the sewer issue, I don't know how we could say that says that the development is timely considering the adequacy of transportation systems, public facilities, and services existing or planned for the area. We know that there are issues with regard to that. Other than that, I thought they were good.
I agree with your comment, but I don't think we need to make a change to the findings for that.
It's just a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I would entertain a motion to accept these staff
Right. To accept the
findings.
findings, right.
Findings.
I'm beyond that title, so I can't read it.
second.
Wow, my first motion.
Commissioner Mahoney. Aye. Commissioner McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe.
Aye.
Commissioner Guile.
Aye.
Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we'll be sending out those findings probably tomorrow on the notice of decision.
Okay.
Whoa.
You're just telling Murphy to just come.
That's okay. It just sounded like it was about ready to come down on us.
Sounds like a radio tower coming down on us.
Be careful there.
So the next item, 4C on our agenda, is PC 14-083, proposed annexation of 5.5 acres at 19588 South McCord Road, and this is also planning file AN 14-01. Do I need to read the script again?
Oh, please don't.
Everyone heard, were you all here for the disclosure in the script about the public
I
hearing?
think we had one new person.
Were you here for the disclosure of the, we read the thing for the hearings. I think you were here. Yes, you are here. As much as we love hearing your melodious voice.
Have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare, and has any commissioner visited the site?
I have visited the site.
I have none.
None.
None. None.
Does anyone wish to question any of the commissioners about these disclosures? All right.
So at this time, we'll proceed with the commission report from the staff.
Chair Kidwell, my name is Pete Walter. I'm Associate Planner, and I just have a quick typo to correct on the front page of my staff report. Under the application type, it mentions 0.89 acres, but elsewhere in the document, it is correct by saying 5.5 acres, so just want to note that. Also, this item is continued from, was continued from June 23rd. So if the Planning Commission makes a decision or a recommendation for approval tonight, we would be sending this to the City Commission for August 6th public hearing. So this is a 5.5 acre annexation proposal on McCord Road at the intersection of Leland and McCord. It's located just to the southeast of the Pavilion Park subdivision. And go through a few points about this property. It is one tax lot of approximately 5.5 acres. It's been within the urban growth boundary since 1979. It's contiguous to the city, and annexation, if approved, would not create any county island. There's no development or zoning proposed at this time. There is a default zoning recommendation in our code for low-density residential to receive a zoning designation of R10, which is a 10,000 square foot lot, within 60 days of the voter approval of the annexation. That is our lowest density comprehensive plan. That is the zoning that implements our low-density comprehensive plan designation. Currently, the property has Clackamas County zoning Future Urban 10, and also, as I'll show in a slide coming up, there are sewer, water, and storm sewer connections directly available. The red star indicates the property. This is an excerpt from the applicant's plan set. It's a combination of zoning and land use. The items in black are indicating zoning, and I've put in blue lettering what the actual land use is. So you can see that to the north and east of the site is the Pavilion Park subdivision, which actually has two zoning designations on it. It's R6 on one section and R3.5 on the part directly to the east. You can see that Anita Place, Joseph Way, Villard Place, and Ross Street all abut the site, and there are also public utilities within those public rights of way directly abutting. To the south, you have the area that is within the urban growth boundary but not annexed to the city yet. And so that area has the FU10 designation as well. And these consist of large lot county residential development.
So this is on the edge of the,
It's on the edge of the city in the south part of the city. Go back to this slide.
Yep.
And if I point, you can see where the urban growth boundary is. It's roughly in this location, McCord Road here, which mostly follows the topography of our bluff. This is not an area that's within a concept plan area, because the concept planning requirement came along after 1979. It came along in the 90s. So it can be brought into the city limit without having to wait for a concept plan to be done. Public utility-wise, is 8-inch sanitary sewer lines, 12-inch storm pipes, and 8-inch water pipes that are city utilities stubbed to the property, and city plans are adopted for this area already. So there were master plans, the sanitary sewer master plan and the storm plan and the water plan all took this area into account because it's an older area of the urban growth boundary. It's not within any of the moratoria areas. I'd like to mention that. It's well served by sewer capacity, and this Public Works Department has not identified any capacity issues with respect to this area. It can be served by existing pipes that connect to existing pump stations, which do not have any issues. This slide illustrates some of these districts that are currently serving the property and how those districts would change if the property is annexed to the city. So the water system is currently Clackamas River Water, who has put a note in the record that they do not have any objections to the annexation, but they request that the property be withdrawn from Clackamas River Water District and connected to the city sewer system at the time of development. They do have pipes. The city and Clackamas County, Clackamas River Water have an agreement for water service within this area of the city, and there is some overlap. What we're attempting to do with these annexation agreements is to clarify who's responsible for what, and so this is one of the recommended findings, is that it be withdrawn from CRW. Stormwater is currently a county system consisting of ditches on the roads and that sort of thing, not a developed storm system that would become a storm sewer system in compliance with the city's stormwater plan if development is proposed on the property. The sewer system currently served by the county, septic, I believe, that serves the existing development there. Basically, what's out there today is a Christmas tree farm, a house, fairly large house, and 3 outbuildings. So it's currently not a developed sewer system. And our policy is that when properties are annexed to Oregon City, they are also annexed into the Oregon City they also have to annex to Tri-City Sewer Service District as a separate annexation.
Is it currently on septic?
I believe so, yes.
They wouldn't be hooked up in any way.
Yeah. And so we're expecting that if they are annexed, then they would, go through the development process and either hook the existing house up if they want to as part of that subdivision. We would charge system development charges and make the appropriate connections at that time. Fire and emergency services. So this is paramedic and fire. Doesn't change. Property is within Clackamas Fire District Number 1. And that is not going to change. Oregon City School District will not change. So that is already within that district. Police services will change from the Clackamas County Enhanced Law Enforcement District, which is the Sheriff's Department, to Oregon City Police Department. And those police department services we paid for out of Oregon City tax base if its property is annexed. Police department did not indicate that they had inadequate capacity to serve this property with any officers or response time problems.
It's one single-family dwelling, so.
Just going to go into a little more detail on some other things of interest. With respect to parks, future development is responsible for paying a park system development charge with each building permit on a new development property. What's existing today is Wesley Lynn Park, directly 500 feet to the north of this property here. Then you have the Filbert Run Park under soon to be developed, we hope, with contracting out for the design of that park at the moment. And then the Hillendale Park is the next park to the north, within about a mile. Also, we have our trails and parks master plan, and those really come to bear when a development proposal comes in. And we'll be looking closely at those if the property is annexed to see what trail connections might be available to be made in this part of the city. With respect to transportation, we have our new adopted transportation system plan. And they used to look at our land use and then use that using what they call TAZ or TAZ modeling to figure out what the impact on the transportation system would be in the future under an assumption of land use. And so John Replinger, our transportation consultant, looked at this property, and the applicant also addressed it in their materials. And the determination is that these impacts, traffic impacts, have been accounted for within the adopted transportation system plan, and the necessary improvements would be accommodated as development moves forward. They're assuming low-density R10 zoning and no change to that at this time. And based on that assumption, we believe that rezoning to R10 is consistent with the assumptions in the transportation system plan. However, additional analysis is required if a development proposal is submitted, and we're looking much more closely at the site, at the off-site intersections, what the existing conditions are, and what the impact of that development is on these systems. As I mentioned, the school district doesn't change. However, I just wanted to show you where the locations of our schools are nearby. Of McLaughlin Elementary School here over on the west in the South End Road area, King Elementary up here, Gardner Middle School, Gaffney Lane Elementary. We have the Clackamas Community College here, and the high school over here. And here's our development property now.
Let's put some more trailers.
Our annex property. In the staff report, we look at Chapter 14, boundary changes, and make a recommendation based on these following factors: the adequacy of the access to the site, conformity of the proposal with the city's comprehensive plan, policies, and goals, adequacy and availability of public facilities and services to serve the potential development on the property, compliance with Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 222, and Metro Code, Section 309. Natural hazards, that, if any, that have been identified, such as wetlands, floodplains, and steep slopes, and any significant adverse effect on specially designated open space, scenic, historic, or natural resource areas by urbanization of the subject property at the time of annexation. And we must find a lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. So these are considered factors that the City Commission makes a determination that on the balance they need to be met. There's not a requirement that these factors all be met. However, it provides a general set of guidelines for approval of annexations. And based on our review as staff by the engineering department and looking at both the city's comprehensive plan policies as well as the relevant agreements that we have in place, including our urban growth management agreement for this area with Clackamas County and the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan, which has designated the area as future urban and is suitable for urbanization. We believe that it's met these criteria. I did not provide additional slides indicating all of the comprehensive plan goals and policies, but they're in my staff report. We primarily look at Chapter 14, the urbanization section. And then as based on the low-density residential comprehensive plan designation and our code for annexations, we would apply a low-density zoning to this property of R10. With that, we're recommending that the Planning Commission approve AN 1401 and recommend it to the City Commission for their August 6th meeting. Is that all of our annexations are subject to voter approval, and this would be forwarded to the voters for final approval on the November 4th ballot of this year if the City Commission votes to approve it. And I'll be happy to answer any more detailed questions you might have about this property.
Questions for staff?
About as straightforward as you
I
can.
have a question. What would the circumstances be that the planning staff would not recommend an annexation?
Cherry stem and
Yeah.
creating an island
Non-contiguous to
not contiguous to the city limits.
Adjacent to the moratorium.
If you were in a moratorium area, we would probably have a discussion about how we wanted to handle that.
Another aspect what might be if it really was not a suitable development site due to physical or natural constraints of some kind. However, we try to do a good job of identifying those in advance based on our overlay district mapping, not just our own overlay district mapping, but the mapping that Metro has and the county has and Dogami has.
Yeah,
So
don't forget Dogami.
yeah, exactly. So we look pretty closely at that when we're reviewing these, and we're also, without using too fine a comb, looking at the potential for redevelopment and can it be served with public utilities and street stubs without a big extension that would be inefficient. So there's an efficiency factor which you look at in each case, and if that is met, then we would provide a recommendation for approval.
Was there a shadow plat connected to this?
No, there was not a development plat on the annexation. I don't remember if there was on the pre-application conference or not, but
Because of the timing associated with
Yeah.
it, the development's not designed.
Yeah, well, maybe some of these questions will be for the representatives, but I know in the past that the commission has had concerns. I saw trees on the site, I mean, it was pretty dense, so I mean, I really couldn't see a whole lot when I went by there, but I have concerns that regardless of whether it's a Christmas tree farm, that we don't see an application come forward where the site has been cleared and trees are sort of suddenly start disappearing or buildings start disappearing in the interim.
Is it the Christmas trees or the larger trees?
The larger trees.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I completely agree on actual trees. We dealt with this on another project before where it was a Christmas tree farm. It was planted as such.
Sure.
And so we worked with the developer because it really,
Yeah, they have to cut Christmas
That's
trees.
just
right. But when they come in, they left them to do the subdivision, and all of a sudden they owed us 1,200 trees,
Yes,
which really
yes.
wasn't the intent
No,
of the
it was
code.
not the intent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a crop at that point. It's
Yeah.
just grass.
Especially when they can demonstrate that they've harvested. That's
Sure.
what it was planted
Yeah.
for.
And they're
Yep.
doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but the other thing too is that I just wanted to add is that one of the things that I continually have concerns with regard to these types of applications is that I recently attended a city commission meeting that involved a topic not necessarily related to planning commission, and it involved our police department. And I know what the capacity of our police department is, and I know that they did not comment, but I still have major concerns about the adequacy of police services. We are spread pretty darn thin. And I know that we all wish the timing would be better, but we have to work within, what we have. So that's been a concern since way back about.
That'd be my concern once they came forward with a plat, but it's a single-family dwelling being added
Right.
at this point, and that's pretty de minimis.
Just want to
Especially 'cause they're
clarify.
driving right next to it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to clarify Denise's comment about the trees. You had mentioned you would recommend no cutting of trees prior to his application.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't bode well when an applicant comes in for one thing and then they come back later and then all of a sudden we find out all the trees have been cut. And we want to trees really help make a neighborhood.
Pete, I don't have the map up, but is this the site surrounded on at least 3 sides by city?
No, just
Just 2?
It's right there.
Right here and here.
Along the northwestern edge here
Right.
and the northeastern edge here.
So this yellow
Yeah.
stripe coming down here in the middle, does that present a problem if you've got city homes in the middle of that little T there? Because these other homes aren't, but that one little
Well,
strip is?
There's no city on this side, so it's not an island. If this property over here were to annex, then that would be a bit of a problem because you'd have to decide
But I was just thinking
what to
about
do.
for getting in and out of this property, I'm not sure how wide it is.
Oh,
Would you
yeah.
have to have a road that comes down the center of it, or how would people get into
Yeah.
homes that are in that?
Well, it's about 75 feet
Right.
wide.
Actually,
It's 50.
if you look at the adjacent neighborhoods, the
It's
road
50 feet wide at
is-
that little.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's a
same
road.
width
I'm
of
looking at
that.
this
No,
road
it
right here, and
needs
it
to be
seems
more than that.
equivalent
Usually we
to
have a
the...
60-foot right away.
That's why I was asking if
Yeah.
the shadow plat had been submitted,
Okay.
because it would appear that the road on the west side of the property is almost in alignment with that.
That's what I was...
It's 53 feet. I'm
So-
looking at Exhibit B.
It would make some sense, you would think, to connect through there for the
Well, as they said,
access point.
it's
Yeah.
always interesting. I know that, and I appreciate what you said, Tony, about timing, but, people don't annex because they just want to annex. They annex because they're looking at some potential development. So I will save the rest of my questions for the applicant.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay.
Thank you.
So, do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Or the applicant's representative, I guess.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Chair Kidwell, members of the commission. My name is Chris Goodell. I'm with AKS Engineering and Forestry. We're working with the applicant, and we prepared the application for the annexation here before you tonight. Here to support express the applicant's support for the staff report and the application. we appreciate the positive staff report and support the findings and recommendations therein. You had a couple of points that you brought up, and I'll touch on them briefly. I don't have a fancy presentation for an annexation application because really, on paper, and in reality, what you see is what will end up happening is there's nothing. It's an annexation. So with respect to trees, once it annexes, then it's under the city's control as far as tree removal, and you're under the city's rules. Right now, it's under the county's rules, so there's it's out of the city's hands as far as if you want to cut trees. So once it annexes, it's in the city's control. With respect to access, the site's got a ton of access. It's got McCord Road, which is where it accesses currently. You got, I think, 1, 2, 3 stub streets, and so ultimately, when this property owner chooses to do something with their property, they've got a variety of ways to get into and out of the site. As far as plans for development, there are none that I'm aware of at this time. I haven't been made aware of anything other than the annexation. That's the application that's here before you tonight. You mentioned that you had some questions, and I'm happy to answer them the best that I can here, so would like to do so.
Questions for the applicant?
Okay, my intent was to nicely give notice that regardless of whether it's under the county jurisdiction, I would not recommend the trees that are not Christmas trees be removed, because by the time it gets to us, let's say it's approved for annexation and then there's a subsequent request for development and we find out that the trees have been
Clear cut.
I will say that unanimously this commission has not been very happy about that. So I want to just get that out ahead of time so that you were aware of that, so that we don't end up with that situation, because it's happened many times before and we've been very discouraged by that.
Understood. And that's a universal. I work in all the different cities, and I've never heard anybody say we're in support of the clear cutting before. So it's not a surprise.
We're in support of clear cutting. That's your thing.
Yeah. Well, the mill isn't there anymore.
I know. There you go. So yeah. So the applicants, the names look awfully familiar. So I know that are they buying this on contract, or the sales going through, or because I noticed that wasn't the same name as the property owners.
That's correct. They're not. So I don't know if they're still currently purchasing it or not.
Okay.
They were looking at it before.
Mm-hmm. So like I said, the names are familiar, and I won't bet real money, but people have ideas in their head about what they want to do, so that may not have been totally fleshed out. That's why Charles Kidwell asked about, was there a shadow plat? So
okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
No.
Thanks again for your time. We appreciate it. We support your recommendation of approval to the City Commission next week. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any cards from the public for public testimony.
No.
No one wishes to speak. So at this time, we'll close the public hearing portion of this.
I think you're going for rules.
I'd like to.
I'd like to make a motion and approve PC 14-083, proposed annexation of 5.5 acres.
It's actually AN 1401.
I hadn't gotten that far. I was.
So I'll second anything you say, David.
So
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Call for the question?
Commissioner McGriff.
No.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Aye.
Commissioner Guile.
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe.
aye.
Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
So the recommendation of approval to the City Commission for their consideration at the August 6th meeting is forwarded with a vote of 4-1.
Correct.
Okay.
Sign comment.
The next item on our agenda is PC 14-088, Oregon City Sign Code Update, Planning File L 14-01. We have a staff report.
Yes, thank you. So continuing to work on the sign code, incorporating the edits from our last meeting. The one thing that we are holding up on is we're doing a citywide inventory of murals and art.
Good.
And then we need to go through and identify all those and codify which ones are going to be art and which ones aren't. So it's taken a little bit longer than we had anticipated. So when I had originally wrote this, I was hoping to be further along than I am with a continuance request to August 11th. So we got a couple things coming down the pipe here all at once. One of them being, I am not going to be here for one of our planning commission meetings. So
You are allowed to take vacation.
I am trying to squeeze one in
and
there.
I would encourage you to take a vacation because we want you to be refreshed and a happy person.
Well earned.
A well-earned vacation.
And then we are likely, and we're going to have a little discussion about this afterwards, but just looking at the calendar, we're probably looking at Willamette Falls Legacy Project coming before you September 8th, 15th, and 22nd, essentially
Did
3
he sign the
Mondays in a
application?
row. Yes, he did.
Yay!
So with that being said, I'm going to request that we continue the sign code to September 22nd. It'll be at the tail end, hopefully, of Willamette Falls. I'll have some staff back for assistance, and it'll give us time to get through this inventory and categorize everything appropriately.
Yeah, I'd like to have that done.
It's
good.
such a big part of that, plus
Yeah.
figure out the rest of the Arts Commission and how that's going to work relative to September 22nd.
So when you say art, are you talking about, for instance, the statue that's across the street? Is that what you mean by
There's
art?
some
or are
of-
you talking about wall art?
So
Wall-
my
mar-
focus is on murals.
Murals, okay.
But we were also doing an inventory for insurance purposes of
Okay.
other things
That's a
throughout
good
the
idea.
city. So I got wrapped up in a larger project.
Well, that's
Well,
probably
and,
a good
and to a certain extent, we kind of need to determine if somebody puts a statue in their yard, is it a sign, or is it art, or is it, because...
It's a sign they have no taste.
Depends on what it is. So that's a legitimate angle of it, because I know a couple places have like big eagles and carve their trees instead of tore them down. And
I'm focusing on the public realm right at the
I
moment.
understand that.
Could you make sure for the inventory, I know that maybe you don't think of this as art, but the McLaughlin neighborhood, with the permission of the city on 7th Street, put tiles in the sidewalk that identify different former historic sites, and we would not like to see those left out.
Left out overnight? or-
No, left out is
Oh,
not being their
not
art.
being
They're-
identified.
Yeah, been identified because they were classified as a.
Okay, so I'll follow up
An
on
art type
the total
project, yeah.
scope.
Is that called
It was
ground
being
art?
run out of public.
It's ground art. Yes, it's ground.
It was being run out of Public Works with some of
Yes.
their interns,
Yes.
and I was able to get my stuff in with
Yay.
them. So
Well,
I'll
it's
see
still
what
on the street.
I'll see where they're at.
Yeah.
And then we have the sign, right?
There.
Yes, there. The big sign at the
Top of the hill.
hill that says McLaughlin Historic District with some,
You mean a neighborhood association sign?
no, it's our
Yeah.
Conservation District sign.
Oh, okay.
But it says Historic District.
So with that, I guess I would be requesting a continuance to September 22nd. We're
Should we
just
grant it?
So I
for it.
also wanted you guys, I left you this, I have one for you. In my going through all of my papers, I found
But
this article, and I
are we
just
going to
wanted-
finish this item?
Yes,
before-
it's part of that. I just want to
Okay.
say I gave it to you because after I read it again, I found that from 1986 to now, things really haven't changed all that much, and I just thought it was an interesting historical perspective.
Denise was suggesting that this is about what we want to see.
No, I was not. No, it was not. But it's
Wasn't the code
you see, it's
adopted
received September 17th, 1986. I was working at the Deschutes County Planning Department, and we were dealing with signs in the county. But I thought it was just interesting that and something Bob said at the last discussion, that's what, when I read this, I said, oh, I have to copy this, because
Nice
Bob
trip
said
to
exactly what's in here. So anyway, it was just for your edification from back in the good old days in the
Looks like
APA
McLaughlin
magazine.
Anyway, I move to approve the continuance so we can move on.
Second. It's homework, Tom.
Well, it just looks like Reno the last time I was there.
Commissioner Mabey.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney. Aye. Commissioner Guile.
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Griff.
Aye.
Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
There will be a test just for you, Tom. So read this, because I will be asking you questions about
I have
things.
memory
So,
loss.
Tony, do we have any communications?
Yes. Just a reminder that we have the Volunteer recognition night is Thursday, August 14th, 5:30 p.m. at the end of the Oregon Trail. We hope all of you can come out for that night. We recognize all the volunteers and all the organizations throughout the city. So Thursday, August 14th, that's tied in with the concerts in the park.
Can we
I
get
think
those
that's
little
Ray
letters with
Gordon
those
is
stars
that
or
We
night?
whatever?
do. I have the little stickers for you. I handed most of them out, so I do think I have yours still in my office.
I think Ray Gordon is playing that night.
I believe you are correct.
Good.
Yes.
Ray's good.
So
Thursday, August 14th, at what time?
5:30 at the end of the Oregon Trail.
Right down from my house.
You could hobble on down.
Yeah.
So we've on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. We've had a couple of lot happening over the last couple of weeks. The property owner George Heidgerken has signed the land use application. We have
How
not.
do you say his name again?
Heidgerken.
Hyde?
Gherkin.
Gherkin? Like
German.
gherkin like a pickle?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the skin of a pickle.
So he has signed the land use app, but we have not submitted it yet. We're still cleaning it up.
Come on, Jennifer, you know you need something.
Getting that ready for submittal, but we are shooting for September 8th, followed by the next Monday, September 15th, and then September 22nd for Planning Commission meetings on that issue. We would like to know if you guys think you'd be available for a 6 o'clock start on September 8th and September 15th at 6 p.m.
I believe so.
Okay.
Starting the meeting or
Yes.
September 8th and the 15th?
Yes, we're
starting
we'd
the
like.
plan? Not a work session.
Correct.
Sorry.
We'd like to start the hearings a little bit early. We're anticipating
A crowd.
probably.
So we'll
quite a
be
bit of-
meeting 2 weeks in a row.
We'll be meeting 3 weeks,
In
three
a row.
Mondays
3
in a
weeks
row.
in a row.
And I'd be a
The
little
bonus meeting.
Bonus
Wear your
meeting.
ties.
I'd be a little late on the 8th. That's
I got to make up for the one I'm missing.
That's the opening of my store
don't
that
have to
day.
make it up.
So this would be September
8th,
8th,
15th,
15th,
And 22nd.
and 2nd.
and 22nd,
And the 8th and the 15th, we'd like to start at 6 p.m.
at 6 o'clock.
6
Yes.
p.m. Not the 22nd, just the. I'll just come at 6 o'clock.
Everything goes well, maybe we get through it in 2, but we are scheduling 3 at this point.
For some reason, that just seems prudent based on past history.
A lot of people will be here wanting to say something.
Yes. So the partners group, which is made up of 2 electeds and 1 CEO, and the CEO of each of the partners, so the county, Metro, us, and then the state has Representative Barton, Senator Olson, Bobby Lee from the Regional Solutions Office, and MG Devereaux from State Parks. So we met this morning. We're working on a draft memorandum of understanding between all the public agencies that identifies the Riverwalk as the first catalytic project and the first investment of significant public funds on the property. It identifies and goes through and lays out our common history, the work that we've done to date, the commitments that have been made by each of the organizations, and the efforts that have been made to get us to where we're at, to acknowledge a lot of work. So we've actually accomplished quite a bit in 3 years. And then also to lay out the objectives as we negotiate the easement, both with PGE and the property owner, as well as the expectations from each of the organizations when it comes to the fundraising that's going to be necessary to complete the project, and then certain roles that each one will be taking responsibility for as we move forward. Our goal, we had met with staff from each of those agencies in preparation of that MOU prior to, about 2 weeks ago. We had a really good meeting this morning. There seemed to be consensus, unanimous consensus among all the electeds and CEOs there on the direction of the MOU once we walk through it. So each one of those will now be taking it back to their representative organizations, and we're hoping to have a resolution adopting the MOU by each of the organizations, and then have their CEO sign the MOU to begin the process of the next phase. Essentially, we're kind of winding down the land use and public involvement, and so we're gearing up for Riverwalk, creating a friends group for the site, and then really just trying to identify a lot of funding that we need to identify, because there's really the 2 main goals, requirements of the $5 million from the governor's office and in the budget is public ownership in some form of the Riverwalk, the public access along the Riverway, and then a financial plan for the construction of that is signed off by the state before they'll release the $5 million. So those are both 2 things that we're trying to accomplish by March of 2015. So it's going to be here quick, and we need to get working on it.
It's going to really be important.
How binding is that MOU, as you refer to it as? Is just a gentleman's agreement?
It'll be adopted by resolution by each of the agencies and signed by the CEO to agree to do those things. Obviously, you know, MOUs can be broken, but we're hoping that everyone's in agreement up front and has buy-in and will meet their obligations.
Since this is the first big thing, is it going to be a special edition memorandum?
Just your normal.
So it won't be an MOUSE?
I'm so glad that Steve Maves is not here tonight.
Can I ask another question? I don't want to prolong the meeting, but over the weekend they had the first city celebration, and I had people approach me, and I've heard it various times over the weekend. A lot of confusion over what's happening with the Cove, and I don't know what to tell people. There are so many different stories floating around. I mean, is there any brief synopsis? It's going, it's not, it's delayed, anything?
It's delayed at this point. We have an existing development agreement with the developers for construction. Essentially, what they were looking for was a Bureau of Labor
Bureau of Labor and
Industry. There was a decision that was whether this was a public works or not, because we were using public money, but it was under the threshold. But when you account for the land value, once the improvements are made, it's over that. So the decision, the request from Boley was, is this a public works and do we have to pay prevailing wage? Boley determined that it was and that they did, which makes the numbers not work anymore. So they've appealed that decision. So we're waiting a decision on the Boley.
But the primary
appeal.
focus of the Cove right now still remains the same as it was back.
It's the same.
When? God, I can't remember what year that was.
Yeah, it's still residential.
Okay.
With some office and retail.
Who are they appealing to, Tony?
The state.
It has an administrative appeal process.
It's with the federal government?
No, this is state. Brad Avakian is our Bureau Labor Commissioner.
Oh.
And so Boley is under his office.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but my experience with my former agency is that they never really had an issue with that, because throwing in the land, it always put it over the threshold, because there is some value to that. So, there's not, I know it skews the numbers, but it's something that they can use if they can make the rest of the numbers pencil out, that it's a good thing.
Right. I think the frustrating part is that it has a negative $10 million value. And the only time it has value is when you actually make the improvements, and we're required to use the improved value.
Yeah.
Which, is hard because you need someone to make that initial investment to get it to that worth that.
But it was amazing. I heard those things, and I can't believe how many times I heard people thinking that the Blue Heron was going to be a state park, even though we had all the publicity and all the promotion, everything that's gone out there.
There was a booth. Well, I don't know.
And we had a Blue Heron booth down there, and still people, I hear it's going to be a state park. Oh, come on.
Well, State Parks has been a great partner throughout this
they've
whole
been a partner,
part,
but it's not going to be.
No,
right.
no. As far as I know.
Exclusively anyway.
So at the first city celebrations, we did run 3 sets of tours in the morning at 9, 10:30, and 12. We got about 135 people through the site in the morning, and then we did have a booth there at the First City Festival from 11 till I think they shut it down around 7:30 or so. So a lot of excitement out there still, a lot of support. So we'll continue to try and move that project along.
What are
Anything that's really good takes time.
what are the meeting dates in August?
11th.
We have
And
August
25th.
11th, and August 25th, and so
And that'll be regular time.
that'll be yes.
We're doing it on Kidwell time.
I have no operations scheduled.
I was going to ask you if you were going to go under the knife again. I don't know what's going on. Did you happen to see that your quote in the Oregon City News and the Oregonian?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You talked about a rat's patootie, and you were prominently quoted.
I've been looking. I haven't seen that.
Thank God it wasn't
In the
me.
Oregonian?
Yeah, it's in both of them.
I never get the stupid community news. I'm supposed to get it, and I never do.
You have a subscription?
Yeah.
Then you need to call Raymond.
It just never shows up.
Patootie.
So that's all that I
rat's
have.
no, it was specifically a rat's patootie.
Oh.
He was quoted.
Okay.
Eloquent.
I'll have to Check your Oregon City News at least.
Okay, are we
Done.
I move
Done?
we adjourn.
all right?
Second, third.
We
fourth,
are
and fifth.
adjourned.
Maybe your family's gonna say, "Who are you?"
No.
when you walk in the door.
Might just make it.